Good evening. My name is Samantha Saxer, and today I will be going over my final presentation for the Intercultural Communications class. So for my first official slide, I am going to give a little insight about my grandparents, kind of a little bit about how they grew up and who they are as people, and kind of a little bit of what they've taught me. So if you look at this picture here to the left, you can see this is my grandfather. His name is David. He was born in Edmond, Oklahoma to two brothers and two hearing parents. One of his brothers was also deaf as well as him, and he had another brother who was hearing. And to the right, this is my grandmother. Her name is Ramona Saxer. She was born in Fort Scott, Kansas. The only child of her family, also to hearing parents as well. But whenever they had grew up and started to be able to go to school and everything, since being deaf and mute, and especially in the early 1900s, it just wasn't easy to go to a regular school. They didn't accommodate like they do now. So they both attended the School of the Deaf in Olathe, Kansas, and that is where they met each other at the age of 13, and they were together ever since until my grandmother passed away. Now, if we're looking to this picture here on the right, this is me in high school with both my grandfather and my grandmother. They have taught me so much, just from having my dad, who is a hearing father. Being born to two deaf parents and being hearing has a name of Coda. A lot of hearing children don't really like this name because it kind of just gives like a label onto someone of something they don't really like, because, they were normal parents, they just happened to be deaf, so that's not something that should be labeled as different, I feel like, and so does my father. Next slide, I'm going to be talking about digital versus face-to-face communication, how they just kind of differ, and especially whenever dealing with people of sign language. So whenever I want to talk about from our slides and our chapters from the class, I want to talk a little bit about chapter 6. This had all about the influence of interactive media and kind of the preferences between digital and face-to-face communication. So when being deaf, you don't really, I guess now you do, but in the past you didn't really have the opportunity to own an iPhone or to own a computer, because yeah, you can type to someone to speak back and forth, but it just wasn't the same. Like, you can't call somebody and speak to them because you can't hear. FaceTime was not invented until 2010, so that was a really big breakthrough, especially for people that were deaf, other than like Skype and other apps that you'd have to get for other digital devices. FaceTime already came with the electronics, and it was just super helpful whenever trying to speak to someone. And the first cordless phone was not invented until the early 1950s, and it wasn't manufactured until the 1980s, actually by Sony. And the first cordless phone was invented by Thomas Carter. It was just kind of a really good invention, especially whenever like the touchscreen phones came in the early 2000s. But before any of the phones and stuff were invented, there was an answering machine. I can't exactly remember the name of it, and I couldn't find it when searching it up. But it was sort of a machine where the person who is deaf would type to a middleman, and that middleman would then relay that message to my father or my mother, whoever was speaking to my grandparents. And my father would relay the message back to them. They would type it back to my grandparents, and just so forth. So that was kind of what I was used to when growing up and speaking to my grandparents, not ever being able to FaceTime them or text them, because my grandparents actually didn't receive their first electronic device until around 2013 to 2015. So they were well into their 70s by then. Another thing that's really hard when speaking to somebody is, or somebody who is deaf, is kind of slang. There's a lot of slang that just kind of comes out every so months even, and that can't exactly be translated into sign language. Of course, like, there's the alphabet where you can just sign it out to somebody, but there are certain signs that you would speak to somebody that have already been in ASL, just like in the English language, that wouldn't be in our dictionary that we use in the everyday life. So I want to talk a little bit about the communication accommodation theory that was also found in one of our slides. It just kind of talks about how people adjust to communicate by minimalizing social differences. So we try to fit in with other people by doing what other people are doing. And this is also a great way of kind of speaking, like, deaf people don't have that opportunity to know, like, what's in the trends, what are people saying, what's happening. So when speaking to somebody who is deaf, it is best to just stick to the basics. We have a lot of slang now, just LOL, which if you're speaking to someone in sign language, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, no, that doesn't even mean anything. You're going to be like, LOL. You're not going to read it as laugh it out loud. Lit, if you tell somebody lit, they're going to think, oh, like, is something on fire? Like, do you want me to light the candle? Salty, obviously to us, that means that you're mad and you're just not happy right now. But to somebody, you might be like, what's salty? Like, did you just eat something? Is there a taste in your mouth? We know tea as being able to speak somebody and, like, getting the gossip and knowing what everything's all about. But when speaking to somebody who's deaf, you're going to be like, tea? And they're going to be like, you want some tea? It just doesn't translate well into sign language. So I think that it's just to be able to speak to somebody regularly like you already know how to. For my next slide, I'm going to talk about the important use of body language. I believe that this is the most important part when signing to somebody, because when speaking, we hear the tone in our voice. If somebody, like, if I'm speaking to you like this, that I am speaking monotoned and something is wrong with me. I may not be happy right now, but I'm speaking to you like this. I'm excited, I'm loud. You can see my facial expressions. That's how we speak in tone to each other. And, like, whenever I'm signing to my grandparents, I'll be, how are you? I'm good. Like, that's great. Like, you got to show it within your body. There's been many times when I've spoken to my grandparents and, I might not just be, like, going through the best time of day, and, like, I'm not just going to go out and tell them that, but they can kind of sense it through my body language. Like, I'm speaking to them and I have a frown on my face, or I'm not smiling, or I keep looking away. They're going to take that as, oh, she's bored with us. She doesn't want to be speaking to us. When in actuality, it just may be something different going on within my life. I just haven't really been able to speak to somebody about it. Also wanting to speak about what we have learned more in our chapters on chapter 6, slide 4, being an anomalist person or position is meaning that perception is not shaped by language. You learn as you grow in real life scenarios and how you feel, not by what others tell you. A lot of people do go by, like, what they've learned from their parents, what they've learned from their friends, but I'm a firm believer in that you need to do what is best for you and what has always worked out for you. So I don't think that perception is shaped by language. I think it is shaped by real world scenarios and kind of what you go through throughout your life. Okay, and now I just kind of want to go over a little bit of signs you can learn, because obviously, like I spoke about in my presentation prep, a lot of people know how to say, hi, how are you? English, ¿cómo estás? Spanish. It's really easy to be learning in other languages, but a lot of people don't know how to say stuff in sign language. So I'm going to give you a little gist of it. So if you want to say, hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Show your facial expressions, be happy. That was saying, hi, how are you? The next sign I'm going to talk about is my name is. So my name is Samantha. So my grandparents actually have a little sign for me, this is the sign for S, and they just put it by their heart. So I'll be using that, but you just go, or you can point yourself, my name is Samantha. Or in your case, you go, my name is Bryson. If you ever want to, learn that for the future, just a little tippy. And for my last one, I will say, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. And those are just some simple signs that you can speak to somebody in sign language. It means the world to them whenever you try and just accommodate to what they are doing and, like, their language. And I really think that it's important that everybody can just kind of learn these languages and speak to somebody and kind of get out of your comfort zone, because it will make somebody else happy, and I already know that it'll make you feel a lot better towards the end of yourself. And my next slide is just going to be my We're Excited. Obviously, I also got it from the book, but I just wanted to say thank you for this class and everything we have done this semester. I really enjoyed it, and I've learned a lot from this class, and just thank you so much.